So I went looking at a car this weekend. And as I'm sitting there, like, oh, you got 10 minutes, you got 10 minutes. Everybody's been through the car purchase experience, that new car purchase experience. And so I waited, and I said, I've got an appointment, I have to go. We live in a digital era. You've got my phone number, you've got my email. Go ahead and send me the information when you have it. And their interpretation of the digital experience was he sent me a picture of a handwritten note with highlighter markings on it of a configuration that took them 2.5 hours to understand was in the car. So I thought, no, the handwritten story does in fact resonate. We still have configuration problems today by taking notes and not having bundled solutions work for us. My name is Marshall Cram. I run the Salesforce practice here, Online Business Systems. We started up the Salesforce practice in 2019, January 2019. I'm based out of the Alberta area. My team composed of, we have 15 people, very strongly virtualized team. We have people joining us from India, Venezuela, Brazil, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver. Toronto is a stretch now with the virtualized world. Roman is, I think you just bought in the Niagara Peninsula, is that correct?
Sure, yeah.
Yep. And so, we're all getting more comfortable with this virtual delivery solution, and we're definitely seeing that, benefits us in being able to have the best people on our team come together to deliver the solutions. I have Lee Yakichuk with me today. I'm going to let Lee talk a bit about his experience, and then we're going to talk a bit about some of the stories about CPQ. So I think first I'm going to sit down, make it casual for everybody. And in terms of this kind of question and answer, I want, if you have questions or if we're not explaining things for you, please don't hesitate to tell us. So Lee, I guess, the first thing we'll start with is, even in the introductions, is does everybody know what CPQ stands for? I think is kind of the big question. Paul does? Yeah. Okay. So you're close, yeah. So Lee, go ahead.
So it's configure, price, quote. So the configure and price are almost the same thing, but there's a bit of an element to the configuration, basically like with rules and like they're called product rules, and so basically the product rules dictate what you can do, what you can't do, what comes with what doesn't come with what, can't come with what, how many this, how many that, even down to the cost, because you can do margin calculations and all sorts of stuff. So and then there's the pricing, which you basically you have your unit prices, and then you have your actual net sales price, and then discounting, and then that leads to your actual margins, and then the quote, and then the quote is the no, that's not true. I was going to say the quote's the big one because now you have a quick quote to the customer real quick, but you also did the other two steps really quickly rather than writing them all down on a piece of paper and highlighting, which options go with which. This system just tells you the system will just tell you what's allowed to go with what automatically comes with what, and then the actual cost versus what you can sell it for, and then approvals and which we'll get into.
Yeah. Not bad. Yeah, and it's if anybody's used Salesforce has it takes you to the sale, it takes you to the opportunity, but when you get down to the products and the documentation capabilities of Salesforce, that's where its limitations really become apparent, and especially around the rules, and that's where Salesforce CPQ is. So I'll maybe let you talk about the history of CPQ, or I can jump in.
Like the actual history, or like quick quotes?
Yeah.
Quote quickly.
Just where your history, its
history.
My
history comes from I was working at Shaw, and they have a myriad of different product offerings from TV, internet, and phone, and then there's other stuff too, like dark fiber and a whole bunch of other things. So the enterprise group, they're old sales guys. They knew what they were doing there, no problems. But the SMB group, typically it was younger people, just starting out. And then obviously we had, good people, bad people, like every other group, but the amount of turnover in the group and the amount of mistakes, and then the quoting process. So they would send out quotes, which would then ultimately be rejected by the corporation because it's just not profitable. We're not going to make any money for 22 years in this deal. So on a 5-year deal. So basically that the training, the approvals, the whole thing was just a mess. And so at first we started looking for something to manage this within the Salesforce system, because we were using Salesforce. We were using leads and opportunities, and we were even using contracts. Not super well, but we were using them. And they decided, because we had an in-house development team, let's just build CPQ. So it was fun to do as a developer. We went through and we gathered all the requirements. My team was the digital transformation team within Shaw, in the Shaw business space. And we gathered all the requirements and we started building out, it was called MEF. I can't remember what it stands for. But anyway, it's basically like it doesn't matter what it is. Sorry, I like to go into details too much. But anyway, so we built this system where you just entered your numbers, you entered all your little this and that, and it would tell you what to put in, what to sell. So that was great. It worked really well. But now we need to change it because products change. This technology is no longer available or been upgraded. Well, now it's a heavy lift to go and modify everything. So so we started making those changes. So then that's kind of how then we were like, we can't do this every single time. And now this new product doesn't fit in this, even none of these boxes even match. So we started looking at Steelbrick, which is Salesforce CPQ, and Velocity, which is also Salesforce CPQ sort of now. And both of them super powerful, super agile, like in the modifications, the changes, all the different fields and stuff you're allowed to do. In the end, CPQ won out, and then we just started configuring that to basically to grow the SMB business because now we were able to be quick and basically just get our quotes out the door that were correct. And that was the biggest thing is basically because now we don't have to do the training, the approvals, the re-quoting, because this is just not an acceptable quote. All that stuff really cut down and basically saved us a lot of money and got us a lot of business in the end. Yeah.
So let's dive into.
1 second.
Thanks.
So you kind of mentioned velocity.
Yeah.
But CPQ versus now it's not velocity, it's Omni Studio,
Yeah.
which isn't Omni Studio, it's actually Salesforce Industries.
Yeah.
And it has data matrices and
Data raptors and
the
processes.
calculation procedures and all of that stuff, and it's flow, it's an Omni,
Yeah.
all of those things. Is that now, are they merging these two products? Or is
No,
this
I
a
would
separate-
say that they're not even gonna, because I feel like the CPQ is probably built a little bit more for, like, when you work with Velocity, you're doing integrations most of the time. Like I mean, you don't actually have to, but it's like, you're consuming data from elsewhere.
Yeah, it makes it
Usually.
really easy to do that.
Yeah, 100%.
And it also allows now to have the data matrices and the calculation, whatever they're called.
Right, like,
So
you could just put a table in and then that
Basically,
table
you
is.
upload it and then that becomes the
Yeah.
configuration. Is that a similar approach to what CPQ is?
CPQ can do that, so basically they have table lookups, object lookups, and so you can create an object, add whatever fields you want, and then the exact same sort of thing. So you basically say, match on this, and then give me this field and put it in that field. Match on this, and then give me this field and put it in that field. And so that exists in both systems for the most part. And that was kind of like, that's actually one of the main features of CPQ when it first came out, because it's a powerful lookup tool. Stuff like that. And so basically this system has allowed them to not forget those things first and foremost. Brings down their approvals, because their approvals now are just auto approved. If you fall within these categories, then your quote's out the door right now. And then of course, if you want to give someone a good deal, then you can get an approval, and that process is still available. But now there's guardrails, and so if you want to go outside those guardrails, you have to try. And whereas basically in the system before, it was just it's Wild West, and you could add whatever you wanted and do whatever you wanted.
Yeah. The other thing that it's funny, I was at Shaw at Salesforce and actually did a demonstration of CPQ for ATCO Structures and Logistics back in 2016. So I didn't realize that until you just mentioned it. One of the things that also is a value proposition that's forgotten about within CPQ is while it helps you with the sales, helps with the bundling of the sales, it actually helps you with the service. And so one of the key things in that particular user case is they didn't know what trailers were out there. They literally didn't know the lapse of lease. They didn't know what was in that particular trailer. They didn't have warranty services associated with the different trailers. So there's a lot of revenue that was being lost as a result. And then they would have a trailer like, oh, this one's coming back. It would come back and it would be completely unsuitable for the next lease that they had lined up. So now with these configuration bundles transparent to the support group, they were able to make sure that they had proper warranty agreements and that they understood the configurations of the trailers as they came back for release. One of the things we talked about before was maybe highlighting in the subscription economy that we all seem to be living in. Some of the benefits that you see in that as well.
So basically, and that's a huge one for CPQ is renewals, because they will manage manage them, but basically remind you. So you have a 3-year rental agreement for on a trailer, and you can set the system up so that it'll automatically create a new opportunity for you, so that you can either renew this contract, or you can or you just call them and you do you, right? So whatever your business is, whatever your business model is, you need to get it back. So now you know what's coming back. You know what you need to resell, or you need to basically just manage. And so it doesn't let, like, just similar to what you were saying earlier, it doesn't let stuff fall off the radar, because now you have basically just a reminder that, I mean, obviously if you try, you could let it fall off the radar, but the subscription itself now becomes a living entity. And on top of that, let's say I have one trailer at site, and you know what, this is not going to be enough space for us. We need 2 trailers at site, but not for the whole period. I just need it for the last 6 months. You can amend the contracts, and the system does that as well, where you can basically just say, amend. It recreates the contract with the new service and prorates from, the first trailer would be the full rate, and then the second trailer. And if you needed to, you could, if it warrants it, it's another really good feature is that, so now if you say you get, if you buy one trailer, it's 100% of cost. If you have 2 trailers, you get 80% of cost. Now that you have 2 trailers in the last 6 months, both of those trailers would now be at the 80% price, and so it would step down for the last 6 months in the first trailer, and then just only charge the last trailer at the 80%. But whatever your business rules are, it's able to do that. And also, it'll also I love talking about CPQ. I could talk all day about it. But another thing it'll do too is it'll check other contracts and give you those discounts. So you can set it up to do a lot of that stuff. Sorry.
No, don't apologize. This is the conversation. One thing that's overlooked, and that we'll jump into when you start to lean into it, is a CPQ, we configure, price, quote, but we don't really highlight the document capabilities of it.
Yeah.
And the contract capabilities, which I would argue is perhaps the most powerful
100%.
Piece of it.
That's actually one of the biggest parts at Shaw when they were creating their contracts. We had all these documents that were locked, and then people would find the unlocked versions, and they would change, and so then your terms and conditions would be different. They would remove them, and then legal would get involved, and there was a big problem with that. And so and then the added of saying, okay, so in Salesforce I have these 5 services. Now I need to go into this Excel document or PDF and add those 5 services and create this quote. So just there's time lost. Then there's also the human error, of transposing from one system to another, swivel chairing back and forth, and then the added sending it out to the customer, waiting for it to come back, coming back into Salesforce and saying, we've won this contract. CPQ will automatically generate these documents for you. So they have quote templates, and basically they do all your line items. You can split your line items out. You can add your terms and services. You can add any sort of like attachments. You can add Adobe Sign, what's the other one? DocuSign. Thank you. And then you send it to the customer. They can accept it, reject it. If they reject it and they say, I want something else, you just change your quote and then reissue. And it's quick. It's not like, now you don't have to do a new, and let's say they wanted a new service that has some extra terms and services or terms and conditions. Well, instead of having to find that new template, the template just changes. It automatically changes, and then as well, it'll also do, they're in Quebec, switch to French, and it sends it in French.
So could you, a question for me is, some organizations, they purchase or lease.
Yeah.
So, a person says, I want to make a purchase decision on this, and then you change, he says, no, I'd rather look at the lease option. You could check the lease option on that checkbox. Well, then it reconfigure the quote to the full leasing capabilities and quote.
Yeah. So what typically what I recommend is you clone it, and then you have two quotes, and then now, because that's the beauty of the quote system, which is native in Salesforce. It's nothing to do with CPQ, but basically with one opportunity, you can have 58 quotes, and you can say, pick one. Which one do you want, right? So here's all the configurations we've gone through, similar to your highlighted pieces, right? So it's 3 different quotes.
Right.
You choose. So if you want the lease, you want the purchase, you want the rental, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then then you can send them all 3, and they can just pick one. So in that way, you've generated 3 quick quotes, and then at the very end, the contract gets generated. And so that contract can go out for signature as well. So they signed off on the quote, you deliver your services whatever your business needs are, whether it's a delivery of product or a delivery of services or, subscription model. And then once the contract gets signed, yes, we want this, then they sign the contract, and now it goes into the system, and then we'll remind you to renew, or that, they might have used their 10,000 widgets up in, say, 6 months. So let's call them and see if we can make another sale.
It's interesting. I look at the amalgamation of car dealerships. That's just my example because of my use case. But you have the Dilawari group now who owns, I don't know how many dealerships now, but they're a substantial corporate entity. And I think about their ability to use CPQ for the quoting configuration,
For sure.
rather than the 3 tricolor handwritten
Scan.
note that was experience. We already talked a bit about the renewals, subscriptions. Maybe I don't know if you want to go into it a little bit more detail or just.
So like renewals and subscriptions are actually one of the, I think this is one of my favorite parts, but it's one of the least understood, least used parts. But so they have you can do, I guess you can do that in all things, but basically you could do time-based pricing. So if you go to 1 to 6 months, it's this. So the first 6 months you get a 50% discount if you buy today, and so you can do stuff like that. And you can have and then the following year, 2 years or whatever it is the regular price. And then if you renew at this time, then you can get another 50% off. And very similar to all the stuff you see at Shaw or TELUS or any sort of subscription place where they want to
You have to cancel first to show.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
You have to threaten to cancel.
Yeah. I think about an app, a Calm, that I subscribe to. We don't need to talk about that per se, but they send messages, and of course the pricing kept fluctuating in terms of trying to capture me through an automated messaging.
Yeah.
And then when they catch that, that's the price. And when they send out the message for the renewal, I get this as well. And you can automate, obviously, communications.
Yeah,
And
and
Salesforce.
that's actually another good point. This is another Salesforce thing, not specifically a CPQ thing, but you can also automate I'm getting my Rogers contract is up in December, and I've been getting TELUS Mobility emails like mad, and I haven't gotten one in 2 years. And lately, but I was on the phone with them and didn't sign with them and sign with Rogers, and now they know my 2-year contract's coming up because that's a typical contract, and so they're pushing really hard to get my business, which they might get because.
Yeah, that's great, and that's good use of the CRM.
Right, and so
System.
so a closed one is great, but a closed loss is also an opportunity. If someone's if you close loss on a 5-year deal, well, 4 years and 4.5 years from now, let's see what we can follow up with and get that business.
I think I don't know if it was you and I were talking this week, but one of the least used powers of Salesforce is the opportunity.
Yeah.
Whether it's closed or lost, people just tend to let that opportunity data fall off the shelf and not use it and action it, for future things, analysis, where you want to hit up campaigns, where you want to follow up with additional marketing, where you might want to put territorial emphasis on, and that's has nothing to do with CPQ, like you said, but definitely an area where we see organizations just not using just the simple potential of Salesforce opportunities to the full advantage.
I was actually in a CPQ kickoff meeting for a project that I'm doing yesterday, and it was with a team in the United States, and the sales leaders were complaining about Salesforce because all they see is close one. So these people, like all of our salespeople have 100% sales rate. It's impossible. I'm like, okay, well, you have to make sure that they enter everything in the system. You can't just, okay, now I got the sale, I'll put it in the system. It has to so they probably did the paper, faxed it over, or, scanned it and sent it over and then entered the data. So you kind of have to have a culture shift where you make sure that the system is the system of record. And it's not just, we don't want to track your closed loss because, we want to harp on you for quotas or whatever. We want to see what's not selling. And so that's a good, if you see quotes that weren't accepted, if you have 15 quotes and this one is always accepted and it always is A and B products, well, maybe we bundle those products. Maybe we, or let's look at this. Why is C and D not selling? Why is A and C not selling? And your product team can now go through and make compelling offers that so you have that analysis anyway.
Yeah, it's arguably one of the most powerful things that is. I think it's a revelation for me, and it sounds like such a ridiculous light bulb, but data, and in terms of how I talk to prospects and clients now, is the importance of capturing that data and then utilizing that data. And I don't think it's fully realized that when you're pushing sales and trying to get sales deal closed and wait, you've also got this data. And some organizations are starting to say, hey, we've got all this customer data. And Jason, I don't know if this is one you're facing, but they've been dealing through brokers. I've talked to companies that are dealing with brokers and like, well, wait a second, we've actually got the customer relationship. We have all this customer data, and they hadn't looked to use it. And now when you digitize their experience, you start to build and leverage Salesforce.
Yeah.
Now they get
turn it into information.
Yeah, value information. One of the things that's kind of we kind of moved through is two things. So two things. One is Roman Melnick, to my right here, delivered a CPQ solution for a small enterprise last year. And I asked Roman to join us. He was over at CWB, but I asked him to join us and just give us a brief kind of demonstration of a solution that we built out for a particular client. So we're going to wrap up a little bit here. I'm going to have Roman take over and just give us a demonstration and talk a bit about that. Before we wrap up, though, one of the things that isn't talked about is every solution has a maintenance requirement. So while it sells, Salesforce will do a great job, and next week Dreamforce is coming up. They're going to make everything sound like it does everything for you all by itself. There's some maintenance to it, and there's some needs, but that maintenance also has a benefit. And I know we talked a bit about that. Maybe you can just kind of highlight what we're talking about here.
So one of the things that we at Shaw we were guilty of for sure, and pretty much every corporation I've ever worked for is guilty of, is stuff tends to get stale and then no one upkeeps. And then communication breaks down and things so then the system kind of becomes, it's not working, let's stop using it. And so you're now wasting your money on these operational dollars that just went out the window. So one of the biggest benefits that we found is we started, depending on so with your pricing teams, your product teams, marketing, whoever, you need to have some sort of change control and governance, and those teams need to meet regularly, and so that the Salesforce administration or whoever's managing the price books and the CPQ system in Salesforce, it doesn't even have to be CPQ, it should just Salesforce itself. They know what's coming, they know what specials are coming, they know and maybe not even, it doesn't even have to be the details, it just has to be okay, so now we need to start thinking about how we're going to implement a 50% off for 3 months of the year, or a step up of this if you have this many, if you sold this many widgets in the last year type of thing. So we had a governance body that met, I think we were meeting twice a month at first, and that became way too much because we weren't changing our products that often, but so we went down to once a month, an hour-long meeting. Each group got to speak about what they're doing, and then if we needed to meet more, two groups, so if pricing was the guys who manage all the what the discounts and all that stuff are going to be, well, let's meet again, because obviously you guys have something coming down the pipe, and then you kind of get that, I don't want to say camaraderie, because you kind of already have that, but you get that the familiarity, so now you can actually be talking, and so the system doesn't get stale, you're not paying for a system that no one's using or complaining about, and And then obviously you can continue to sell it at the speed that you're basically paying for.
Yeah, and we talked a bit about, just thinking about the product manager,
Yeah.
and then you mentioned marketing, and I remember I worked at a company, and marketing would work alone, and they'd create a packaged deal, and that wouldn't be configured in the back system. So when it comes down to anything we do, it's people, process, and technology.
Yeah.
And you have to have, like you said, stakeholders come to the table. It doesn't have to be twice a month, which is enormous.
Yeah,
But it's important that a marketing initiative be configured to be available for those teams in the future. But that kind of wraps up what we wanted to share with you in terms of talking about CPQ, what CPQ can do for you, some of the things that we think aren't understood or missed when we look at CPQ as a solution for organizations. And with that said, I want to thank you everybody for taking time to come and hang out with us this afternoon and take time away from their regular schedule.